This is Ricordo di Sergente Picconi.
92-year-old Mary Ravarino has a very important story to tell.
World War II, 1944 to 1945.
But she's running out of time.
Prisoners of war that came out to Utah General Depot.
It's a story about war. Romance.
One guy was kind of getting attracted to my first cousin, Ida, and they were thinking about getting married, but her dad says, "No way, you're getting married. They're going back to Italy, and that's where they're going to stay."
A nearly forgotten chapter, an Italian recital in America. During World War II, 50,000 Italian prisoners of war were shipped to America and dispersed in camps in numerous states. 7,000 ended up in Utah. Nearly all agreed to denounce fascism, placing them in Italian service units. Initially, they were given combat-related jobs. Later, they were allowed more freedom. Soon, Catholic parishes began praying with them, and Italian-American families followed by opening their doors to them.
My parents, of course, spoke Italian, and, the hospitality was very warm. And in fact, St. Joseph's Church then, they had some dances, and in fact, some neighbors that I know from West Warren, which was a little farther out than West Weber, where most of that Tyrolean group was, they married some of those LDS ladies that were from out that way.
Eventually, the Italians were able to have jobs they knew well. As tailors, they repaired 4,669 pairs of trousers, 776 jackets, and 547 shirts. They were allowed to show their skills at cooking, and an Italian at the oven, even during the war, is a good sign.
They all had access to the kitchen, and they really were fed well out there. In fact, when they came out for dinner, they were allowed to come with a guard. They always had to have a guard with them, only one guard. They would actually bring to the hostess jelly roll or some kind of sweet that they would make, and then they came to our family home and had dinner with our family, a Sunday dinner on Sunday.
If you stumble across this Orem, Utah museum, another piece of the prisoner of war puzzle emerges. Right there, in the back of a room, a model of one of the camps where the Italians worked and played, as this soccer scene shows. And what you're seeing here, historic film of a prisoner of war camp in a Utah neighborhood. Imagine this scene in your backyard. And more of the story can be found behind this old black and white photograph, where the Falvo family sold groceries in Magna, Utah, where they made customers feel like family, and where young Mike Falvo recalls prisoners coming to dinner.
Looking back, oh boy, look, I wonder if these guys are going to try to escape or something, And I remember Dad with a Dodge car he had. He would drive up to Ogden and sign in. He had to sign a paper that he was responsible for these war prisoners, and they were going to come down and they were going to have dinner with us. There was 5 of them, and they were from Cosenza. And Dad would bring them down, and Mom would have a big spaghetti and meatball dinner, salad, and then she'd have a big roast with potatoes and stuff in them, so it'd be diversified. And then they would sit and talk about the old country, where Mom and Dad were from and where they were from, and they were waiting for the war to be over.
Those Sunday dinner gatherings, still a signature event in Utah. Italians gathering to celebrate, share a meal, a handshake, a hug, and of course, plenty of laughter. The bounty of life, Italian style. That's where we found Elma Mata and her story of Italian prisoners of war who worked on their family farm, a farm her mother fondly called paradise.
I'd stop at the stop sign and she'd say to me in Italian, "Momenti assumo in paradiso." Soon we'll be in paradise, the farm. That's always stayed with me. It was her paradise because she came from poverty. And Dad owned a farm. He owned it.
A farm, ironically, that shared its bounty with Italian prisoners.
On a coal stove, she'd cook polenta, raviolis, rice, minestrone, and bake her own bread. And she looked so forward to having these prisoners in her home.
Oh yes, bringing prisoners home for dinner or dancing with prisoners did raise a few eyebrows.
Because they were prisoners. They all were in uniform, and the only thing they had was a badge on their arm that said they were POW. Some Italians were very skeptical, and they didn't get involved. But I don't know why. I can't tell you. I wasn't communicating with them.
Quanti?
Since Dominic.
Mary Ravarino and her friends play cards not just to pass the time, but to connect with yesterday, the big war, religion, and of course, to speak Italian.
Giocare le carte.
Speaking Italian, looking Italian, even growing up Italian, was not always easy.
When we got on the bus, I'm sorry to say, oh, here comes the WAP. Here, the Dago's here. They were really mean. They were mean. And I used to be so sad to think that it still hurts. Because as a child, we felt ostracized, even though there was a whole group of us. But we'd get on the bus and we were the Dago. The WAP got on the bus.
Sometimes an apology takes the long way home.
My niece had a party. Someone from West Warren, and I was from West Weber, was there. And she sat by me, very educated person. And she said, "Mary, I have to tell you this. I feel so bad. We thought you were those WAPs and Dagos, and we called you that, and we were mean, and you were such good people."
Even when the war ended, not all of the Italian prisoners of war made it home. 12 died in Utah. They now rest under sweeping trees, tucked into a corner, their distinctive Italian names chiseled into grave markers.
We would have the Bishop of the Catholic Church. First we had Bishop Hunt, and then we had Bishop Federal, and then we had Bishop Wiegand. And they were all part of a ceremony of blessing of the graves and a nice little prayer service. We would have one of our league members named Tuck Marcantonio, who was a marvelous trumpet player, and he would come and play taps. It was very, very beautiful.
It was always really something special to me that we could honor these Italians that I knew nothing about, where they came from, how they died, but they were Italian, and I'm really Italian, and they needed to be honored.
Finding out more about the Italian soldiers is a difficult task. Much of their story has been lost, forgotten, or pushed aside. But a new determination, bona fide research, and going wherever the story is will deliver.
The reason that we go to Italy to do research is because we've already been to the National Archives in Washington, and there are more documents that are only found in other places. In Rome, we can look at the archives in Italian Army records, we can look at the Italian Navy archives, and we can go next door to the Vatican Secret Archives in Vatican City. They sent emissaries to inspect the camps to find out how many guys were there, what the conditions were, and where the camps were located. We can also talk to families whose fathers and grandfathers were held in prisoner of war camps in America to learn their stories. And that's why we have to go halfway around the world to do it.
Why go so far to find a story from long ago?
It was part of our past.
Mary Ravarino's important story, and that of all of her friends who share in it, that wonderful memory, is fading, like a timepiece you can barely hear. Their war story, a chapter of Utah history, an American diary, teetering on the edge of a lost canyon.